What's up? And welcome into Under the Hood with me, J-Hood. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to everything we do on YouTube and also on the podcast as well. Our podcast and our YouTube is growing because of you, because you're sharing it out, because you're responding, because you're liking the videos. Thank you so much as we continue to grow here at Under the Hood with Jonathan Hood, presented by NHSChicago.org. That's right, Neighborhood Housing Services of Chicago. It's all over the video right now. They celebrated 50 years in service to the Chicagoland community. If you're ready to move out, you're ready to get out of that loft or that apartment. You say, I just want to plant roots by being able to have my own home. You get the education process. You learn so much more about home buying, and you can do it through Neighborhood Housing Services of Chicago, nhschicago.org, for our friends over at Neighborhood Housing Services of Chicago. They've helped my family, and they can help yours as well. nhschicago.org. So, here on September 8th, you know what this means, right? You know what day it is, right? You know how important this day is. It's the day after my birthday. No, it's more than that. As I celebrated over the weekend, my God, did I celebrate. So grateful to be here for another year. But it's more than just the day after my birthday. Yes, it is the Chicago Bears. It is time for the Bears to start figuring things out with Caleb Williams and with Ben Johnson. So I cannot wait for the Bears and Vikings. And of course, we got full coverage on ESPN 1000 and also ESPN Chicago. Hey, if you haven't downloaded the ESPN Chicago app, please do so. That's where you can hear Jeff and Tom with their call. We got coverage all day. And of course, the Kap and J-Hood Morning Show. We're on at 6 a.m. now, 6 to 9 a.m. Central Time. So wherever you're watching this, if you're watching this, you should be watching and listening to the radio show. Watch it on YouTube with ESPN Chicago and also on the ESPN Chicago app where you can listen along. But yeah, this is a fun time for the Chicago Bears. As I want to give you 5 things I'm looking forward to seeing here as we start the season against the Minnesota Vikings. First, that man right there, Coach Johnson. So Ben Johnson as in a category by himself. Ben Johnson is important for the Chicago Bears team. There is a lot of pressure on Ben Johnson because of what happened last year with Matt Eberflus and that coaching staff last year. We've gone through the different coaches over the years, from Lovie Smith to Mark Trestman, the John Fox, and Matt Nagy and Matty Eberflus, and so many coaches in the past, where you go through regime change after regime change, and you're saying, okay, when will this stop? When will the Chicago Bears be able to get this right? Where you have a coach and a coaching staff in place, and you're picking the right players, and you're drafting well, and you're getting yourself in a position where you can be a contender, let alone a champion. And it's really been so few and far in between when it comes to being able to find the right coach and the right coaching staff, and the right personnel that works all at the same time, and not just for a year, not for a pop-up championship, not for a playoff run, but for multiple playoff runs. And I think that with Ben Johnson, this is a different dynamic with this Chicago Bears team because Ben Johnson has a lot to work with. You take a look at the wide receivers that the Bears have. You take a look at the tight ends that they have. You look at the offensive line. And I just think that when you take a look at everything that the Bears have been able to do, they've been able to supply a lot for Ben Johnson to work with. Now, the question is, how will it work? I mean, everything comes down to quarterback and head coach more times than not in the National Football League. It's the thing we talk about the most. Who's the head coach and who's going to be the quarterback that can lead them? And so with this, it's all new. It's new for Caleb Williams to have someone that's in his corner that was able to help the career of Jared Goff and put up numbers that we've never seen before with the Detroit Lions. And then from there, you see that Ben Johnson was able to get a coaching job, parlayed what he did with Detroit, taking them from the doldrums to where they are right now. And that is a contending team in the NFC North. When I take a look at this offense and I open up the depth chart every day, and I'm just wowed by the offseason that we have. There's DJ Moore, there's Roma Dunze, there's Zacchaeus, there is our new offensive linemen, 3 of them with Joe Tooney, Drew Dahlman, and Jonah Jackson. There's 2 tight ends with Cole Kmet and Colston Loveland. There's a running back in DeAndre Swift. There is a lot for this team to be able to work with. But the question is, how will it work? There's only one football. How will Ben Johnson be able to put this together? Just understand when you take a look at Ben Johnson, he's no miracle worker. He's just a guy that really worked well with Detroit. And Caleb Williams had so many different voices in his head, and so many things he did right and a lot of things he did wrong as a quarterback for this football team in his first year. But now the slate is wiped clean, and now it's year two for Caleb Williams with a very experienced offensive play caller. What does that mean for this upcoming season? Well, you and I are going to break this down because we're going to take a look at the schedule for the Chicago Bears, and I'll make my official prediction here. So let's take a look at the 2025 schedule for the Chicago Bears. It starts with the Vikings game on Monday Night Football on the 8th of September. The Vikings and Bears, the Bears, I believe, will win that game on Monday Night Football against the Vikings. We will see. At the Detroit Lions, the Bears, I think, can win that game at Detroit. That's the revenge game for Ben Johnson to go back to Detroit. A lot of people respected him with the Lions when he's the offensive coordinator. I think the Bears will find a way to win that ball game in a tight one against Detroit. Against Dallas, I think that is a loss against the Dallas Cowboys. I just think that there will be enough firepower offensively to get past the Bears at home at Soldier Field, so have that as a loss. And a win against the Las Vegas Raiders, that's going to be Chicago West. That's going to be Chicago Vegas because we'll be there with TrueFanTravel.com, the staff at ESPN 1000, and so many Bears fans are traveling to see the Bears against the Las Vegas Raiders. I think the Bears can go 3-1 going into the bye. Now, no matter if these predictions are right or not, I still feel that the Bears can get off to a really good start. I think that offensively speaking, the Bears can be able to do some damage against the Vikings and the Lions and Vegas. But against Dallas, I don't know if they can go step for step with Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. We'll see. Maybe they will win that ball game. But I feel good about a 3-1 going into the bye week. That's going to be at the end of September going into October. And again, a lot of this is predicated on an offense that can be able to really work well offensively, where you could see Caleb Williams getting better, getting more of a rhythm. Now, what concerns me about these four games and the season is what the Bears will do or will not do defensively. And we'll get into the defensive issues I have in just a moment. But 3-1 into the bye. Let's go to the next four games because this is how we're going to break it down when we take a look at the schedule. So let's take a look at the game against Washington, right back to the belly of the beast, taking on the Washington Commanders. I believe that's a win for the Bears. I think Caleb Williams going home to D.C. I think that the Bears will win that ball game against Washington. And boy, the narratives coming out of that, even before we get there, about Jaden Daniels, a quarterback for the Commanders, and Caleb Williams, they're going to be tied at the hip for their careers. Who's going to be better? Who's going to be best? And the Bears will find a way to win that ball game against Washington. The Bears will beat the Saints. Saints are, I think, one of the worst teams in the NFL. And I think the Bears can be able to get past the Saints. And now we get to a very, very precarious part of the schedule because the Bears in back-to-back games play on the road at Baltimore, at Cincinnati. I have the Bears losing those ball games. Okay, so again, the at Washington against the Saints, at Baltimore, Cincinnati. It's 3 out of 4 on the road. I think the Bears will split those 2-2 at that particular point. So we're talking about 3-1 in the first four games, and I see them going 2-2 in the next four games. Cincinnati and Baltimore at a different level. If you watched Baltimore, they scored 40 points and still lost to Buffalo in week one. I mean, they've got firepower. They just have to be able to find some defense. Do the Bears have that kind of firepower offensively to get past the Ravens? I'm not so sure. Cincinnati with Joe Burrow, that's the top-level team offensively. It's not like it's impossible, but I think on the road it could be a close game where the Bengals find a way to win that contest. So as we go through the schedule further with this Chicago Bears team, let's take a look at the next four. With the New York Giants, I think that's a win for the Giants. I wonder will Jackson Dart will be the starter quarterback by the time we get to that part of the schedule. At Minnesota, I believe it will be a loss. Against Pittsburgh will be a loss, and against Philadelphia, that's a loss. So that's 1-3 in the next four games after that. I think taking on the champions Philadelphia in a hostile environment could be very difficult. I just think the offensive line and with Jalen Hurts at the helm, I think that they're very meticulous. very calculated the way they do things offensively, but defensively, man, that's going to be quite the test for Caleb Williams. Pittsburgh, as I mentioned, last chance for Aaron Rodgers. I expect him to still be healthy. Saw him in that first game, and he was sensational against the Jets. 4 touchdowns for him. He still has it. I just don't know how long that he can maintain a high level with a rickety offensive line for the Steelers, because he had beat down a lot. But when he did get the ball out, it was vintage Rodgers. And then a loss against Minnesota as well. I think that's going to be the top of the NFC North when it's all squared away. So that's a losing streak for the Bears. And one thing about the losing streak for the Bears, I want to point this out. Ben Johnson has great at the podium. He has had a lot of great things to say at the podium. And I think that when people say, "Oh, Ben Johnson has got his chin up and he's got his chest out," and then telling people how it is when it comes to Chicago Bears and talks about accountability and all. Here's the thing: I think people are looking at Ben Johnson in the lens of what Matt Eberflus was not. And I just think that Matt Eberflus, who was hemming and hawing, and he was on our show, Kap and J-Hood, and just couldn't give a straight answer, didn't give the press. I mean, he wasn't very good at the podium. And Ben Johnson is more polished at the podium for now. But the question I would have is not a negative, but a question. How will Ben Johnson be able to handle the press if and when the Bears have any stress, if they have any issues in the face of adversity? How does Ben Johnson handle it? Hopefully, like a professional, like most coaches would. But sometimes some coaches just wilt under the pressure, wilt under the big city. And my hope is that for the Bears and for Ben Johnson, that if they go through a losing streak, which I think they will this upcoming season, how will the locker room and how will Ben Johnson handle it? It's one thing to be in the faces of players, yelling at players and, everything he's got to do to be able to get through the players. But will they still listen when things aren't going well? A 10-game losing streak with Eberflus shows you that was a major problem last year. Accountability, people let go of the rope, and the Bears lost a lot last year. Lost a lot under Eberflus. But that's the one question. I want to see how Ben Johnson's able to handle that. All right, back to the schedule here. So we go now to, let's see, the next 4, and that is Green Bay. I think that's a loss at against Green Bay. Bears are gonna split, by the way, against Green Bay, but a loss is against Green Bay at Lambeau Field. They'll take on Cleveland. Who knows what quarterback they'll be on by that time? Even though Joe Flacco he played well, this might be down to Shedeur Sanders by the time we get to this part of the schedule. So a win against Cleveland, a win against Green Bay at home, and so that's the next 4. From there, let's take it on San Francisco. It's funny about Brock Purdy, the quarterback for San Francisco. As long as he stays healthy, I think that he'll be upright and be able to help this Giants, or rather the 49ers team. I believe that's a loss against San Francisco in a tight one and a win against Detroit. So what I have here with this schedule is a 9-8 schedule, 9-8 for the Chicago Bears this season. And you say, well, Hood, it sounds like there's a lot of losses or there's some negativity there. It's the first year for Ben Johnson. It's the first year for a lot of these coaches. It's the first year for a number of these players. 9-8 more than likely will not get you to the playoffs. I don't think the Bears are going to get there this year. If they get to double digits and they are playing over their heads, I'll be all for it, for real. I'd love that. Because the one little secret amongst others I could tell you about our business, we thrive on positivity. If the positivity is there for the Chicago Bears, we all get paid extra. We get more listeners. We get more people under the tent. We got more views on Under the Hood with Jonathan Hood on YouTube and on the podcast. So we're hoping that the Bears are going to be more than 9-8. I think on the radio I said 8-9, and I think that I should have flipped that because I was looking for one game I wasn't sure I was really sure about. I wasn't sure about one of the games on the schedule. Maybe it was the 49ers game late. I wasn't sure whether or not the Bears are going to win that game or not. So I flipped a coin. So it feels like 9-8, 8-9, somewhere in there. And as we know for the Bengals last year, 9-8 was not good enough to get you to the playoffs. I think that Minnesota, even with J.J. McCarthy and Kevin O'Connell as the head coach, as long as that young man stays healthy, I think they find a way to keep the line moving offensively. I think that they're very good on the lines, offense and defensive lines. I think that the Vikings can definitely be in the playoffs. I think when I think about Micah for the Green Bay Packers, yeah, I think that he can really be able to change the fortunes for that team defensively, the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions. Will they falter all the way to the bottom from first to last? I'm not so sure about that. Even with the missing some offensive linemen, I think also without having their offense and defensive coordinator, no more Aaron Glenn, no more Ben Johnson, I have to see it to believe it. I know that the Lions did not fare well in game one. They were just really bad offensively against the Green Bay Packers on the road. But is that who they are? We're going to find out after this Vikings game when the Bears take on Detroit at Ford Field, won't we? So it's I just think that with this team, I think it feels like a nine. We are presented by Neighborhood Housing Services of Chicago, nhschicago.org for Neighborhood Housing Services of Chicago. Ready to be able to get your own home? Check it out, nhschicago.org. Right here on Under the Hood with Jonathan Hood, nhschicago.org for Neighborhood Housing Services of Chicago. Something else I just want to bring up as well regarding the Chicago Bears. And that's five things I'm looking at with this Chicago Bears team. Very quickly. Number one is Caleb Williams. Five things I'm looking at. Caleb Williams has to be able to lead this team, not just because he's the captain. He needs to be able to have even a better year he had last year. I'm not concerned about 4,000 yards and 40 touchdowns and all that. I just want the operation to look good offensively, where he feels comfortable, where he knows he got to get the ball out quickly, that he's listening to Ben Johnson. It's funny that Caleb called out Ben Johnson in a positive way late last year on the St. Brown Brothers podcast and said, this is who I want. I want to have someone like Ben Johnson as my head coach. He says he wants to be coached hard. Well, this is an opportunity for the Chicago Bears and Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson to be on the same page. I'd love for that to happen. That's number one. Number two for the Chicago Bears is Roma Dunze. Roma Dunze is a wide receiver. I believe at some point this will be his team. He'll be the number one receiver on this football team. No shot at DJ Moore. I just think that under Ben Johnson, an opportunity for Roma Dunze to be able to eat in this offense. I think that Caleb's very comfortable with Roma Dunze as well. From there, I think that's Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson is, when he's healthy, whether it's game one against Minnesota or throughout the season, he has to be a catalyst in the secondary for the Bears again, for them to be able to make plays. So Jalen Johnson's number three on the list. Number four is Joe Thuney. It's more than just his offensive line play. They need someone that is a leader in that team. He comes from someplace else, but he's a Chicago Bear now, so his leadership is definitely needed on this team based on the Bears not having enough leaders last year to be able to be vocal and help the team. And number five, the combination of Adingbo and Sweat. Those guys have to get after the quarterback. It is important for Sweat and Adingbo have to be able to get after the quarterback because if not, if you're not getting pressure, if not stopping the run, and you're not getting after the quarterback to make him uncomfortable in the pocket, then what's going on here, right? So Dennis Allen has a lot of pressure on him as well to be able to tighten the screws on this team defensively. He can't make them make tackles, but he's got to put them in a position that they can succeed. And those players have to perform. That defense was underwhelming last year under Matt Eberflus. It has to be better for this upcoming season. Something else I want to bring up, too, about Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. And that is the piece that was written. And I don't know if you're aware of it, but if you are not, let's talk about it right here on Under the Hood. So let's talk about the one story that is written by Tyler Dunn. Tyler Dunn, for those that don't know, has a Substack. And he's been writing columns about certain teams, kind of like the rumor innuendo and the dirt about certain teams in the National Football League. So it landed at the Bears' doorstep. And so here is a guy like Tyler Dunn, who is supposed to be a journalist and talked to 32 Bears insiders about a number of things involving the Bears organization that came to light from his standpoint. And he went from going after Ryan Poles from his time with Kansas City to now the Chicago Bears to Kevin Warren and stuff about Caleb Williams. Now, here's the thing I will tell you. Let me go back to camera here because I want to make sure. I just want to just talk a little bit about um, Tyler Dunn and what he wrote. I read everything that he wrote regarding the Chicago Bears. If you're not, you can look it up yourself. I won't go through everything chapter and verse, but I do want to give a commentary on Tyler Dunn. And so one of the things that was brought up in the piece was talking about Caleb Williams, how Caleb Williams was not a great leader in year one as a quarterback for this football team, that Caleb Williams turned his back on Thomas Brown, who was the interim coach after Matt Eberflus was fired, or during the time that that Thomas Brown was the offensive coordinator for this team when Shane Waldron was fired, that Caleb Williams was just not a great leader based on what Tyler Dunn says. Also, there was some kind of story, I believe in maybe the number 2 or number 3, third piece of this from Tyler Dunn that says that maybe Caleb Williams has a learning disability and that the Bears have hit a mental condition about Caleb Williams. And, you know, I read that and I was wondering, like, where would he get that from? Why would he say that about Caleb Williams? And why is it relevant to the Bears in 2025? Just because someone writes it doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. But even if it is true, what is the point of bringing it up now, right before the season starts? And again, Tyler Dunn is reporting what he sees, what he's heard, or what he's read, and what people told him about Caleb Williams. But what's the point of saying it now? Number 2 is that's pretty tough. That's pretty tough to say that he has full knowledge of the cognitive process of Caleb Williams based on what people say about him in the building. Now, he talked to some former coaches that were on this staff, and I believe that those coaches were disgruntled. I really believe when I read that piece, the people he talked to that used to be on his coaching staff, you know, I was thinking those guys are pissed off. They're pissed off that they all got fired. And I'm not naming any names, but I think that if you look back at the coaching staff, maybe you can determine for yourself who you think that talked to Tyler Dunn. I just think there's a lot of people that were on this coaching staff and around the organization over the last couple of years that feel like, man, I'm not making as much money, or I'm out of the league, or I have a job that's less than what I had when I was with the Chicago Bears. So I feel like Caleb Williams is responsible for it, so I'm going to call him out. This also is in response to the Seth Wickersham piece in May, in which the Williams camp was disenchanted with the Chicago Bears, or whether or not Caleb wanted to be a Chicago Bear and he wanted to go someplace else, all that. So I think that some of those people wanted to be able to have their shot at Caleb Williams. And I would say, if you couldn't coach this kid, then that's a problem for you. If you couldn't get him to do a 180 from what you thought was wrong, then you are the problem. Caleb Williams is still here and those coaches are out. There's a reason for that. It's about the one-loss record, but also those coaches did not do their job to be able to help Caleb Williams. So if some of those coaches off the record, of course they wouldn't put their name on it because, you know, that's what cowards do. What I would say is that if you have a problem with the young man, you do whatever you could to turn his career around, even in year one. Make him see things differently. If he's frustrated, you got to let him know, like, hey, man, hey, I'm the coach, and let's talk about this. Let's not be frustrated. Let's not have a disconnect. Let's be able to work together to get this right. And if it is true that there were issues internally between Caleb Williams and coaches, you know, Caleb definitely has blame, but so do the coaches for not getting this thing right. And a lot of those things will not manifest into a winning one-loss record. It doesn't manifest yourself into a winning season. But if nothing else, you could be on the same page with the player. And so when I read that, I just like, yeah, a lot of guys are bitter that they're no longer with the Chicago Bears, and they blame Caleb Williams for it. So they're going to go to, Tyler Dunn and just spew what they thought is right about Caleb Williams. I believe that those coaches that called out Caleb Williams are bitter because they're not part of the Chicago Bears anymore. I think that they're bitter that the Seth Wickersham piece came out on ESPN.com and they feel like, hey, man, I should still be in my position, whatever the position is. And now Caleb Williams is thriving under Ben Johnson. Some of those coaches won't be heard from, or they're doing way less or making way less than they did before. In that case, you help the young man. You do what you can as a coaching staff to be able to elevate him and elevate yourself in the process. Instead, they failed. And now they're bitching about it to some guy that has a Substack just to make the Bears organization look bad and make Caleb Williams look bad. Here's the key to all of this. The Chicago Bears have to find a way to be able to turn the narrative around. Issues with Caleb Williams, issues with Kevin Warren, issues with Ryan Poles. Is Ben Johnson overseeing the whole operation? All this stuff, all the sidebar nonsense does not matter. You know what matters? Wins. And if the organization is getting better. Same old is not getting the Bears anywhere. It's up to the Chicago Bears to be able to change the narrative, not just by getting a new stadium, not by showing how much money you can spend or what you do in free agency, but actually winning. Not for a year. I'm talking about in this regime. If they're not one of the top teams in the NFC moving forward, then that's a problem. That means nothing has really changed. And that means that Chicago Bears are doomed. In this era of Ben Johnson and his coaching staff and Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles, if the Chicago Bears do not look like they're turning around from a 5-win season last year, and if not, they're not going to be in playoff contention over the next 2 or 3 years, serious contenders, then nothing's changed, and nothing ever will change. This is the biggest commitment I've seen from the Bears in decades. The install of 3 new offensive linemen, you got 2 tight ends, you got this plethora of wide receivers. You added 2 new guys to the defensive line, and the Bears couldn't do everything. They couldn't plug every hole, I understand, in the offseason. But if they do not turn things around, then they never will turn things around. They'll just keep the doors open. They'll have a new stadium. But that hope and that wish that the Chicago Bears will win the Super Bowl again, it'll be out the window. This regime has to be able to figure it out. As we're presented by our friends over at Neighborhood Housing Services of Chicago, nhschicago.org. Keep it locked right here to Under the Hood with Jonathan Hood. Make sure that you're with me on the podcast, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get this podcast, as well as on the YouTube. Check out the shorts. Check out the long-form conversations we have on Under the Hood with Jonathan Hood. I'll see you on the radio weekday mornings at 6, and looking forward to the Bears and their matchup against the Vikings and the entire season. So I will talk to you soon on Under the Hood with Jonathan Hood. Thanks for listening. Bear down, bear down.